He's a poster boy of Indian telecoms, a sector that's in the crossroads right now with the advent of a new disruptive player, not for the first time, mind you. But this battle promises to be a fierce one. For some, it's a battle for leadership. For many, it's a battle for survival. Who better than one of India's telecom czars, Sunil Mittal, to put it all in perspective? He's been there, done that, seen it all. Sunil Mittal, such a pleasure chatting with you right here on ET Now. Really appreciate this opportunity. And I've been looking forward to this interaction because there's much to talk about, a lot of ground to cover. And I know you're a straight talker, so I hope you're going to indulge me today as well. To start with, on a lighter note, you seem pretty relaxed for someone whose obituary has been written by, a section of the industry and some section of the media as well. You seem pretty relaxed.
Well, I don't know who you're talking about. I don't think so anybody's written an obituary. You can say there's been a big event in the marketplace, but to say that anybody is writing us off would be an extreme position.
Sure. Does this feel like deja vu? You were there in 2001, 2002 when Reliance made an entry into the sector, and now there's there's another entry, a comeback. Much has changed between then and now. They probably have more cash to play with, understanding of the market. You've grown phenomenally over the last 15, 16 years as well. What's different? Were you more anxious then, or are you more anxious now because the stakes are higher?
I stay calm. I mean, these are the situations when one needs to deal with the outcomes in a very calm manner. You're right, in 2002, there was a big launch at that time, and we were a much smaller company. We were, still learning the, tricks of the trade here. I mean, this is a unique industry in itself. The customer demands are always rising, and you have to, play the catch-up and ensure that you do the best. No, I would say this was in the making for the last 6 years. I think what people are forgetting is it's not just suddenly come out of the blue. This was in the making. In fact, I was rather surprised that it took 6.5, nearly 7 years. And every time I would see Mukesh, I would say, come on, now let's get this rolling, because the overhang is worse than the real launch. And he would laugh and say, as soon as we are ready, we'll launch. So it is a surprise in the market. This was in the making. I think the media, all of you are enjoying it because it's in play now.
In an interview to ET Now, about a month before the launch of Reliance Jio, Kumar Mangalam Birla made this point that he thinks the next 2 years are going to be very turbulent for Indian telecoms. You've seen a fair amount of turbulent time over the last 20 years yourself. Would you agree with that? Is it looking very turbulent for the next 2 years?
It's amazing how this industry has evolved in the last 22 years. Ever since I have been in this industry, and that has been from day one, we have seen too much turbulence. I mean, it has been one turbulence after the other. I mean, you look at the 2001, 2002 you spoke about, the pressures of a new technology that was CDMA at that point in time when GSM was being written off. Then the 2010 crisis where 8-10 new licenses were given out and the whole kind of world started to cave in. So there has been almost never a dull moment in this industry, and it's been a noisy, heavily fought-out industry, because when you have 12 operators killing for the same customer, it's bound to be noisy, it's bound to be interesting in that sense. So I would say this is one of the new cycles. A big launch has happened, and you must give credit to Mukesh for this. It's a grounds up, first time anywhere in the world that somebody is coming from behind to build a new network. So I give him the credit of building a new challenge in the marketplace. It will spur the market, it will evolve the ecosystem. In fact, every time I would meet him, I would say, come on, let's launch this, because that will accelerate the 4G process. I alone, as Airtel, have been leading the 4G charge for the last 2 years. It's hard. You need more players in the market to create a right ecosystem. But
did the scale and audacity of Reliance Jio's launch surprise you? Did it take that by surprise? Did you find it to be as disruptive as it's being made out to be?
No. We have been tracking this every day. They use a lot of our towers. They have one of my subsea cables connecting India to Singapore. That was the first deal we did with them. We sort of talked to each other. We were looking at where the market development is. So Mukesh was very clear. I will not go circle by circle. I will not go territory by territory or even divide the country in 3-4. I want one big India mega launch. That is always known, and I think that's been in the works for 6-7 years, and that's what took time. And then there was 2300 spectrum, then they got into 1800, then 850, so all that took time. I don't think there was any surprise if you're talking in specific terms about the tariffs.
Yeah. Did that surprise you?
No. I mean, in fact, the beauty of the tariffs is they are trying to protect ARPU. And I think it's important that he has gone through a process where he wants straight away for you to focus on what you pay for a bucket, not price per minute, not price per MB or GB. It's the buckets that he has created. Europe, US, Japan, Singapore, all work in buckets. In fact, sometimes it surprises you. Go out into the Indian market, people know their STD rates, their IDD rates, their night rates, their SMS rates, their voice rates, and their data rates. World over, if you ask anybody on the street, nobody knows it. All they know is, I have this pack. And I think that's where the market will move on to. About a year back, we created 2 big packs, and 2 months before they launch, about a month and a half, we put another 2 medium-sized packs. And what they've done is they put out 10 packs out there. So it's pretty much on expected lines.
So it didn't take you by surprise to that extent.
No.
Right. You know, during the launch of Reliance Jio, Mr. Ambani emphatically stated that the era of paying for voice calls is over. Is it?
Well, I think it's a matter of how you see it. Customers must pay for something. And world over, as I said, in the US, Europe and all, there are buckets in which you have a certain amount of data put in. You can have night free data, you can have SMSs, messages, and certain amount of voice minutes. And India at 460, 470 minutes a month of minutes of use is one of the highest usage in the world, because for every call that you make, somebody on the other side needs to be happy to listen to what you want to say. So there's a limitation on that, unlike data, which you can pump all day and night.
Sure. So
from that point of view, no. I mean, my own view is, as long as you can pick up a certain amount of ARPU, you're okay. I mean, go to the television industry, the DTH or the cable. Does anybody ask what is the ET Now subscription or Z subscription or Sony subscription? Nobody will even know it. They know they have packages. I have a bouquet of so many channels, and I have HD channels, and therefore the price is different. I think that's where decisively we're moving to. If you were to say everything is free, data is free, voice is free, then I think we'll be talking a different language or a different discussion today. But to say I need money from you, today a customer pays 160, 170 rupees. That's an average ARPU. If that can actually go to 250 because of more data usage, excellent. But what you need to do for that is more spectrum and more networks.
But you know, Mr. Mittal, the concern is currently about $20 billion of revenues come from voice services, and a little under $7 billion, if I'm not wrong, for the industry as a whole, comes from data. No. So when a dominant player or a disruptive player comes and says voice calling is going to be made completely free, the concern in the market is, what does it do to incumbents for whom a large part of their revenue comes from voice services? This transition to another model, how disruptive will it be for a company like Bharti?
You know, you can make it as disruptive as you want, because if you, in the end, you want to play this game to say, neither I nor anybody else is going to make any margin in this game, that's one discussion. I don't think so. The current discourse is around that. The voice plan is at 149 rupees. The current average ARPUs are 170, 180. So if you want to play the free voice, you need to pay 149 rupees a month. But if you want to play a data game, you need to pay 499 for data and free voice. I'm again coming back to it. These are buckets of plans now. It is not that you can use only voice and pay nothing. You don't have that option. Sure. But if somebody chooses to do that tomorrow, then you are saying that we all want to take this industry down.
You don't see that happening.
It's not the plan.
But where do you see voice going? Do you see voice migrating to voice over IP or VoLTE, which is obviously spectrally more efficient? Will Bharti make that transition as well over the next few weeks and months?
Yeah. First of all, you have to check your own usage pattern. I would encourage you to look at plot your last 2 years out and see how much you speak now. It's a declining curve.
True.
I speak much less, and I can tell you our children, next generation, speak even less. Nobody has the time to speak. They message, WhatsApp, hike, whatever they can do, that's what they do. Facebook, etc. Now, voice has not seen growth in the last 3 or 4 years. It's pretty static. In fact, in certain circles, you see a degrowth. In urban markets and all, you're seeing degrowth. With this, you accelerate the data piece and perhaps accelerate the degrowth of voice. And that's quite eminently possible. Having said that, there are only 60-odd million 4G phones today in the country which are VoLTE enabled. It's growing at 5-6 million a month. So there will be a path where regular voice will start to go down, and VoLTE and IP voice will start to go up. And as operators, whether it's us or Vodafone or Idea or Jio, and eventually even BSNL, we'll all need to put everything on the table. Currently, we have 3 pilots running on VoLTE. I believe the ecosystem is not fully ready, and I am happy that Jio is going to create that ecosystem. The day we feel the need, we'll press the button. We don't have the need because we have alternate mechanisms to carry it.
But how prepared are you to launch a voice calling facility in a VoLTE network? Would you be targeting a launch by, say, 3-4 months, or do you think it could take more time?
No, it doesn't take much time. All I'm saying is we are running 3 pilots already. For us to go, commercially live, we will see the amount of phones on the network. And if it requires, you must understand, today I have for the last 2 years running 4G. And we are running it very successfully. Every time you pick up a 4G phone, you make a call, all you do is automatically it drops down to 3G and makes your call out. And that's the beauty that we have a 4G, we have a 3G, and we have a fallback on 2G. So we can straddle the entire spectrum. But the day there is an ecosystem which is well developed for VoLTE to move forward, we'll switch it on.
You think it'll take 6 months or more?
It can take less if you want.
It could take less.
Yeah.
Would you also offer free voice calling in that, at least in that VoLTE network?
No, already there are 2 plans which we launched before Jio's launch. I think people forget that. I think there was a 1900 plan and a 700 rupees plan in which voice has been thrown in. So we have started to anticipate this particular move and started to do that.
What about the so-called bread and butter spectrum, which is 2G spectrum? As India's leading operator, will you lead the death of 2G spectrum, or will you wait to see if the challenger can change customer behavior as far as 2G is concerned? What will be your position on that?
We will be open. Technology. Thankfully, spectrum has become now technology agnostic. Today, we are running 2G 900 spectrum on 3G now in several markets: Mumbai, Karnataka, Calcutta, Punjab. So you can actually run, Idea is running it in Delhi. You can move 900 to 4G. That's a sub-gigahertz band. So spectrums go across. So it's not that we have bought a 2G spectrum, you're stuck with it. But there are 2G customers out there. Even today in a place like Delhi, about 30 to 33% traffic is on 2G. So there is still a large usage of that. Out of 150 million phones that have been shipped in the year, about 70-80 million are still feature phones, which are non-smartphones, forget being 4G phones. So there's a market to be served there as well.
So realistically speaking, do you think 2G, 3G and 4G can coexist simultaneously, or you think you might have to reform some of this bandwidth?
It will coexist for a period of time. Today, US, Europe, Japan, Singapore, other leading markets, China, all technologies are prevalent. The day the pendulum shifts more towards the 3G, 4G, some of the 2G spectrum will be reformed and put into 3G, 4G.
But on hindsight, do you feel exposed with your 3G bets because you bid aggressively for 3G bandwidth, and you're probably the only operator in India with the kind of 3G capacity that you have? Do you feel exposed with the 3G bets that you took a few years back?
Not at all. In fact, Kerala is the only circle where we don't have 3G, and we intend to fill that hole through either trading or auction, which we will do in the coming days and months. So 3G is a strong underlying layer. Singtel, SoftBank, NTT Docomo, AT&T, everybody uses that layer, Vodafone. So that layer is very good. And the day the phones are more into the 3G side, 4G side, you move your 2100 spectrum from 3G into 4G. It's seamless movement.
Do you foresee a scenario? You spoke about the fact that over a period of time voice revenues will come down and data revenues will pick up. But do you foresee a scenario where voice revenues shrink and data revenues do not offset that loss? Do you see that happening?
No, but then you are painting a scenario where you're saying the overall revenue pie
comes down.
Will come down. I don't think so that will happen, because we have seen continuously pricing of data coming down, continuously voice tariffs coming down, but the overall pool of revenue has gone up between 8 and 12% year on year.
So you think that trend will continue?
I think so, yes.
Sure. What about data? I'm sure you've had a more granular look at the plans that are on offer, and I'm sure you're willing to move as well. How much of a scope is there for data tariffs to come down for the industry as a whole, given the kind of tariffs that have been announced?
I'm again going back to it. I think that the period of tariff per minute, per MB, per GB is gone. You're into buckets now. How much can you stuff into those buckets, you have to decide. So you'll start seeing, you fast forward 6 months, 1 year, and you look back and you'll be amazed why people were discussing unit costs. It'll be buckets now.
But for the end user, will what he's paying come down significantly? Will the cost of experiencing data services be significantly lower than what it is right now?
I think customers will end up paying more, but they will consume
far more,
significantly more data. That's where it'll end up.
By when do we see Airtel? Because post the launch of Rel Jio, we haven't seen Airtel react immediately in terms of tweaking tariff plans and all. You did some in anticipation of the launch. By when do we see you tweaking your existing plans? I know you're not going to call it a tariff cut, so to say, because it isn't. But by when do we see Airtel moving on that direction?
Well, what do you cut to? It's a free period going on. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. Let them carry on with what they're doing. And I personally believe that the regulatory body must look into this whole thing of free period, because you can't respond to an offer which has got no pricing.
So you can, the earliest you can respond is after January, which is when, when the services are commercially launched.
I mean, they claim to be commercially launched, but yet it's free for 4 months. And as I said, how do you respond to that? So you let this period pass through, and I hope TRAI would look into this whole aspect of predatory pricing, and we have already requested TRAI to look into it. But life goes on. I mean, we are watching our trends every day, and I can tell you we are holding our ground.
I'll come to some of these issues in a bit, but I want to talk about price elasticity of data tariffs. You led the move to, as far as saying that, voice tariffs are very price elastic, and so we saw volumes really spike up. Do you see a similar trend in terms of incremental data usage as far as data services are concerned? How price elastic is our data services?
Well, I know in the last 4 or 6 quarters we've seen data slow down.
Exactly.
And that has been reported very widely. And we've done our research, went into rural areas, went into urban centers, and as to why this, at such early stage, there's a slowdown of data. 2 or 3 things were coming through. In the rural areas, we are seeing internet literacy an issue. So I think programs have to go out and, create literacy around internet. There are some people who feel it's not relevant for them. And third was the device price was seen as a barrier. With all this new ecosystem developing and offers that are coming in the marketplace should stroke data consumption. But if you look at the Indian pattern in the last 2-3 years, it's moved from 100 odd KBs to now getting to a GB per customer per month. Will this go to 4 GB, 6 GB? I think that will happen with the amount of data that is going to be put on offer with certain packets and buckets. My own view is that India will get to a 4-6 GB, but mind you, that is a worldwide average high. Korea has about 7 GB per customer per month. Germany has 3.5. Most of Europe is 3.5. US is 3.4. So India may actually start to consume at those levels.
But the key for that is also for the 4G ecosystem to develop in terms of handsets. You yourself spoke about the fact that there are very few 4G enabled handsets in the market. It's a fraction of of 3G enabled or 2. How much time do you think it will take for this to develop? Will it take a year or 2 or more?
If you would have been alone in the 4G game, this would have taken a lot longer. So in that sense, Jio's entry is a welcome step, because that will accelerate the 4G shipments into India, and lower price phones will come. And our main requirement right from day one to now has been affordable devices, good affordable devices. And if you remember, there was a big barrier in 2G, and then finally at the GSMA intervention we got a sub $50 phone, and that exploded the market. In 3G, smartphones came down to 4,000-5,000, and now we're looking at 3,000 or lower. And I think this will accelerate the whole process.
Right, Mr. Mittal. Now I want to address the contentious issues that need your need your comments on that as well. Firstly, at a broader level, since you've been in the industry for 20 years, you've seen operators come and go, over the years. We haven't seen a situation like what we're seeing right now. This sort of divide between Reliance Jio on one side and the existing operators on the other. What is with this ugly spat that we're seeing in the sector right now? Is it to do with the nature of personalities? Is it to do with the stakes involved? What's behind it?
I think whenever such a large event happens, and I have said this earlier, the Jio launch, in that sense, the build-up of Jio, is a big event in the telecom industry, and one cannot underestimate the size and scale of the launch. And the current issues of points of interconnect, porting and all are all, to my mind, side shows and skirmishes which need to settle and will settle very quickly. Point of interconnect is a right of every operator, must be given and taken by everyone. There is no question about that in my mind. In the last 5-6 years, from 2010 we saw 8 new operators come in. I don't think so you've ever even heard a term point of interconnect. It was non-existent. The last time, as the Telecom Secretary rightly pointed out, was in the 90s, when the first time mobile operators came into being and they needed an interconnect with BSNL, MTNL. That is the only time POs were talked about. For all these 20 years, we have not heard about POIs. People come, take POIs and go. And suddenly this has become unnecessarily a big issue. And I have told my team, that I've sent messages to Mukesh and his team, they need to sit down and resolve this. Every passing day and every passing week, this will get resolved. And I'm not saying look out 6 months, 1 year. Look out few weeks, this will get settled. I have no doubt about it. Already few days back, Airtel tripled the capacities. I heard Voda and Idea also increasing their capacities. This will keep on happening.
Right. I will come to a point of integration, Mr. Mittal, but like I said, I don't want to make this a he said, she said interview, but I do want to get your thoughts on some of the issues that have been raised on the table, because I'm sure you'd want to set the record straight as well. So I hope you indulge me on this. Mr. Ambani, on the day of the launch of Reliance Jio, made a pointed comment on incumbents misusing their dominant position and creating entry barriers. The reference is obvious. How would you respond to that?
So that's what I'm saying. What can we create as an entry barrier? Fight well in the marketplace? We will. That's a given. I mean, everybody has to fight. We fight with Voda, Idea, everybody else, every day in the market. I assume that's not what he is suggesting.
Sure.
So we are back to points of interconnect. And I'm telling you, this will be a non-issue in the next few weeks. More and more points of interconnect are being opened up. I think you have to keep in mind, 5th September was the commercial launch. Today we are on the 20th of September. There have been 10 working days. There have been nearly 2,000 POIs that have been provided. And more are being provided. So I think you can't judge this industry in 10 days' time. The problem is in the media and in the letters exchange and all that, the temperature has unnecessarily been taken up. I think we need to lower down. There needs to be a dialogue. People need to sit together. And I can assure you, through your medium, that points of interconnect will never be an issue and should never be an issue.
But would you say, you were on the other side, like you yourself pointed out in the mid-90s, pushing for fair and equitable interconnection. Would you say that incumbent players are being as proactive as they could on the issue of providing interconnection to Reliance Jio?
I think first of all, you have to go into the history of this. The launch is being touted to be happening for the last 3 years. It's happening, you yourself have said, it's happening next month, it's happening 3 months later, happening 6 months later. The fact is, it happened on the 30th when the announcement was made, 30th of August. 5th of September was the launch date. So it's been 10 working days since the launch has happened. It's an all-India launch in one go. It's a size and scale which is very big. It's also a fact that the launch was with free voice and 4 months of free. None of us can anticipate what is likely to happen with their launch. We have asymmetric traffic 10 times to 1. We have to manage our own networks. We have to ensure that quality of service for my customers is not going down. And you also need to know it's not just the point of interconnect the switch. Every call that lands into our network, which has to complete and come and talk to you, for example, goes through a full circuit of transmission, fiber or microwave, into a switch through a radio back to your phone. And you can either receive a call or make a call on the given capacity. So it's absolutely eminently appropriate that everybody balances that whole traffic. So the asymmetric or the large tsunami of voice calls that came through did surprise us. Incidentally, we didn't see any congestion on the NLD, which is national long distance, into our fixed line networks because the traffic was lower. Mobile to mobile, where there are radio network constraints, one had to calibrate. And I think that's why probably in the first few weeks you will hear this noise, but increasingly it will go away.
Because what we are told is that right now they claim that only 1/4 of their capacity is being served, even despite...
So that's because of the traffic mismatch. Our view is that the amount of interconnects that we have given to them, including the one which are under testing, which will hopefully go live now, tonight, whenever, this should take care of 15 million customers. I mean, you should see the ratios that us and Voda have, us and Idea or Arcom or Aircel or Telenor, or for that matter Tata's have. If you have to take that as an industry benchmark. Based on that, we have a provision of 15 million customers. But again, I'm saying, let's not make that, as you said, she said, he said. This will be resolved. I'm saying message is, points of interconnect is not something that anybody should abuse, misuse. But please bear with us. It's been 10 working days. More interconnects will be provided.
But you've also made this point in a statement just this Sunday that you believe some of this rhetoric is because there are technical issues on their network which is leading to call failures, and they're trying to pass the blame on to incumbent operators like Airtel. Why did you say
Well,
that?
I have not said it, but the statement has been made. All I'm saying is, when you are being pushed every day, you have just paid the money, you are starting to test, and then you shoot out a letter. It is bound to create a discourse which is not pleasant. We have to avoid it, and therefore I'm saying a dialogue is necessary. We need to sit on the table. We need to ensure that these small C category issues are sorted out, and we should all focus in the marketplace. Fact is, you have written, when I say you as the media, call drops have increased. I have nothing to do with their call drops.
Sure.
The issue is point of interconnect. If your call goes through, the POI is successful. After that, the call drops has nothing to do with POI. So I think people need to understand that I am only responsible for giving them a high quality interconnect, which we are bound to. which we are obliged to, and we will provide. And therefore I'm saying, let's not start doing a media war or a letter war. Let's resolve this issue as fast as we can. And I'm again saying this will be a non-issue in the coming days.
Sure. Would you be open to meeting Mukesh Ambani up front and sorting these issues and other issues like number portability and all of that? Would you be open to doing that?
I meet Mukesh all the time. 10, 12 days back we had a lovely lunch. So it's not that we don't meet. I think the impression that is being created is that,
you're at war.
It's not true, Point
really?
Is, no, absolutely not. We talk to each other, we visit each other. It's an absolutely wrong suggestion here. And we did talk about all these issues, and I'm telling you again that these will be resolved.
Sure. The other issue that's been raised is on number portability. Could you set the record straight on porting subscribers, because there's this perception that has been created that Bharti is blocking subscribers to port from their network to other networks. How many such requests have you received, and have you denied them? Again,
I'm saying this is again, we need to get out of these small silly issues and start talking about what we are supposed to, our Prime Minister's vision of digital India. I think that's where we need to move to. 69 people after this big launch, as per their claim, have desired to port out. So we will make these 69 people go and be on the Jio network and experience that. We have no difficulty with that. The porting request could only be taken up after the 5th of September. And I can tell you, thousands of people are ported out and tens of thousands are ported in. And that's why Airtel continues to grow its market share. And I really don't feel that 69 porting requests which have gone into some hold-up due to some reason, I'm not even aware of it, should be made a hero in our discussions.
But it's just 69.
That's what they've claimed. Huh? That's what they've claimed.
Okay.
They said 69 people have been denied.
Sure. At one level, though, are you pained by the kind of charges and counter charges that are flying around across the board? I mean, you've built this industry along with a few other players, but you've been there since inception. Are you pained by the kind of charges, but how the discourse has been lowered over the last couple of months? Does it pain you?
It does. It's quite unnecessary, and whether it's the interaction between industry players, and you must remember, prior to Jio's launch, it is not that Idea, Vodafone, and Airtel are letting any amount of pressure on each other to win in the marketplace. They fight for every customer in the marketplace. There is street battle every day, and then there are others, Telenor, Arcom, Aircel, Tata's, BSNL. It's a real fight out there for the customers. But you don't see a situation like this, which has developed in this round. And this should settle very fast, and I would therefore again say to all the industry players, sit on a table, let's discuss issues, get these C-class issues out of the way, and move towards one, consolidation in the industry, ensure that the regulatory regime enables everybody to grow in the marketplace, because in the end, the Digital India mission holds great promise for this nation. It can mitigate a lot of serious lack of infrastructure issues, and I think we are all responsible players to move into that direction. And that's why I'm saying, I hope in the coming days our discussions will be more to win the marketplace rather than having these small issues between us.
But how will you resolve some of the more structural issues? Because you've also sought government intervention, and the sense one gets is that the government isn't keen to intervene. They're saying it's between operators, let them fight it out. Regulator, I'll come to that. That's a separate issue in itself. But how will it be resolved, do you think? Will dialogue between operators resolve?
I think so. It has been the case in 22 years, and for the next 22 years, that's the only way to do it.
And you're open to leading that dialogue?
I don't get involved with this.
As in you, I mean Airtel.
But yes, absolutely. I mean, I would say there is no choice but to deal with all these issues through a collaborative, open and sincere dialogue with each other.
Sure. From one part to another, and this is the one with the regulator. Mr. Mittal, in your 2 decades experience in this sector, you'll agree with me, there's never been a case where the entire industry or a large majority of this industry has come together and accused the regulator of blatant bias. What has precipitated this sort of a crisis for the industry to take such an extreme step?
Well, I am, certainly a believer of sobriety in public discourse, whether it's a relationship with or interaction with the other operators, or more importantly with the government and the organs of the government. And to my mind, the industry must go into a dialogue with the DOT. It must go into a dialogue with TRAI, and whichever other government body that becomes relevant, there should be a dialogue. That we will differ from time to time is a given. That's why this industry also has a lot of litigation in the courts, whether it's on AGR or other matters, the license fee, etc., etc. I mean, there will be differences, but I have to say that sobriety must be maintained. All my life I have ensured that that is the case, and whatever little I can do in this process I will do. I meet the regulator from time to time, I meet the Department of Telecom, the Minister from time to time, and it's been our endeavor to ensure that we seek a level playing field, that we seek understanding of some of the issues that plague the industry, whether it's availability of spectrum or high taxes or high charges. I think we need to bring sobriety. What has happened in the last few weeks needs to be put behind, and we should absolutely look forward to a more engaged process between industry to industry and industry and government.
But do you believe that the regulator is not creating a level playing field, that the level playing field is being distorted to benefit a new operator? By the regulator, not by the government, because I know you believe that the government is being fair, but and by you I mean the industry as a whole, the GSM industry. Would you know,
I would say regulatory bodies receive a lot of inputs from each and every player, and everybody has a different position. Even between us, Voda and Idea, between us and Telenor, us and Arcom, there are different positions. Look at the case of IUC. There's been battles going on for years now. The termination rates have been lowered from 30 to 20 to 14, and these battles have been going on, litigations have been going on. And the regulator will, eventually put out a regulation after listening to all the sides. At times, it does certain things which may not appeal to a section of the industry bodies, and they will agitate against that. They will go to the courts and seek redressal, or go to the ministry, or wherever they can. So I don't think so too much should be read into this. And I bring you back to the point that eventually there is no solution but to work closely with the regulatory bodies in ensuring that their larger agenda of a digital India is met.
I know you're being diplomatically correct, but one of the reasons was this move to lower interconnect charge, or the consultation paper, which many in the industry believe was ahead of schedule, because there was a stated position on when this needs to happen. Could you help us understand why was that such a big issue, and what is your position on interconnect charges? Because if interconnect charges were to be brought down to zero, it is obvious who is going to be the beneficiary of that.
So you are asking a question and you are answering as well. So what do you want me to answer?
I want you to say that, what is the objection to that?
Well, I'll tell you, between us and Vodafone, Idea, other operators, the traffic is symmetric. And let me tell you, it's important that you understand this math. When the traffic is symmetric, you don't pay each other very much. It's on the margin 51, 49, 50, 50, 50.8. There is no money to be paid, so it actually doesn't matter what the IUC charges. When there's asymmetric traffic, and when you, for example, in this particular case, make the voice free, you're bound to create asymmetric traffic. What will that result into? That will result into the entire table of the current rate per minute going down. Because you have a 14 paisa today, which we believe is already below cost, and then you have 50 odd paisa for outgoing. As a blended, that rate becomes 35, 34 paisa, which you see every quarter coming out of all the operators. That is where the table is. And the margin of is also very well known, is 4 or 5 paisa, 3 to 5 paisa depending on who you are, how efficient you are. Now if you actually make the 14 paisa go to nothing, so you're now playing with 50, 55 and 0. So this 34, 35 paisa goes down to 20 something, which means you start actually running the entire network below cost. And that is why IUC is kept. It's not kept to benefit each other, because most of the time the traffic is symmetric. And why in the world there's IUC? It's precisely for this reason, that the networks are put into a behavior which is symmetric. And that's what we're asking for.
But there would be asymmetric traffic every time a new operator joins, because obviously there'll be more people calling from that network than calling into that network, right?
Yeah, but here the issue is, and you're right, everybody who's come in, they'll be asymmetric in the beginning, but it very quickly moves into a symmetry. But here, when you're saying voice for free, for life, then you are actually doing a long-term projection to say it's not going to be symmetric.
I want to shift focus from these parts and all that, and talk about the spectrum auction, which is the next big trigger for the industry, Mr. Mittal. In a few weeks, it's going to kickstart. How big is this auction for you, and what is going to be? I know you can't disclose your bidding strategy, but how significant is this, and are you going to be in it aggressively?
Well, we are in it. We have put our EMD, and I think that should give our intent. We are in it, and in fact, I'm extremely happy that the government has finally put a lot of spectrum on the table. In 22 years, and I must go on record, we have had only one thing: spectrum shortage. And in fact, Himanshu from Idea had about 6-7 months mentioned, we are moving fast from spectrum-starved nation to a spectrum surplus nation. And with this auction, I think the Department of Telecom must be credited with this, that they have brought in a lot of spectrum on the table which was required by this industry. And I heard the Telecom Secretary saying, here and after the industry should not complain that they don't have enough spectrum shortage is gone. By that he's also saying that prior to this, what we have been saying is true, there has been a spectrum shortage. I think that we have been saying for a long time, but most of the people in the government said, no, there's no shortage. It's a confirmation there was a shortage, it's been addressed. Spectrum trading, spectrum sharing, a lot of spectrum on the table moves this industry into a different stratosphere. This is really a welcome good news because ultimately spectrum is at the heart of this business.
Sure.
So it's a welcome step. Airtel in the last few years, very short few years, has paid 88,000 crores for spectrum. 75,000 crores through auctions and 13,500 crores through trading of spectrum. So Airtel has buffered itself up heavily as far as spectrum is concerned, and that's widely acknowledged by all the analysts and research reports. We have certain gaps. Kerala 3G, we are the only circle where we don't have 3G. We will cover that. Will it happen through a trading or will it happen through auction? Let's see, I don't know. But we will cover that gap. And there are a few other small pockets where we will cover, but largely we have a All India 4G footprint, with exception of Kerala, we have a 3G footprint, and of course we have a 2G footprint serving the entire length and breadth of the country. More 4G is being rolled out, more 3G is being rolled out, more fiber is being put through, more submarine cable is going through, more satellite nodes are going through, more IT platforms are going through. So we are firing on all cylinders to be out in the market and be relevant for our customers.
So if I read you correct, this is not a make or break auction for Bharti Airtel, as it may be for some of the other operators who have serious spectrum gaps to plug. For Bharti, it's not a make or break auction.
I would say for both us and Jio. Jio is also tanked themselves up very well, 2300, 1800, 850. They may have again some gaps to cover up to certain levels of spectrum pool. But it doesn't mean you will not take more spectrum or you will not desire to take more spectrum. But having said that, I have to say spectrum is very expensive in this country compared to the revenue that it can generate. The spectrum is only for 20 years, unlike the US where it's in perpetuity. The spectrum pricing is as much as the US in terms of billions of dollars per megahertz on an all India basis, and the revenue pool or ARPUs are much lower. So there is a bit of a conundrum there. I think the first position has been resolved in terms of putting a lot of spectrum on the table. I hope going forward to support the Digital India vision, spectrum will hopefully in the future, whenever more rounds come, will become more affordable.
But does that mean that because the 700 megahertz, for example, which is looked at as a lucrative sort of spectrum, is very aggressively priced, would you say that because of that reason you'll be a little more watchful on how you bid?
Well, I think 700, the pricing has gone wrong. I mean, I can say on record. I think people need to put a context to it. 5 megahertz of 700 megahertz of spectrum, which is band 700, 5 megahertz, which is a very, very tiny slice, mind you, it's not a big slice, is being priced at 60,000 crores for all India. And that's a market cap of many companies, mind you. Now, I personally believe there's no business case to pay so much money for this spectrum and have returns. It is true, it's the best spectrum. It propagates best, and I would say eventually this is a spectrum which all the operators should use to build the vision of Digital India. It's a good spectrum, but the pricing needs to be right. And let's see how the response comes in this particular auction.
Mr. Mittal, I'm sure a few more questions. I know a lot of your investors will also be watching this interview, and they must be wondering what's going on in this sector. You know, the kind of pressure that we're seeing, on stock prices of across telecom companies. Would you say that for the next 2 to 3 years, both revenues and margins will be under pressure, or do you have levers that you generated over the last years, last several years, operational efficiencies, you pioneered, for example, tower sharing, infrastructure sharing. Do you have such levers still, or would it be fair to say that for the next couple of years, for the industry as a whole, revenues and margins will be under pressure?
Success is a lousy teacher. It lulls you into thinking you can never lose. And I think you need to, this is what Bill Gates said once, and you need to keep this in front of you all the time. There are always more opportunities. Never be so arrogant to say that you have used all your levers, you have done everything. You can always do better. There are areas where you can do better cost controls. You can cut a lot of waste in this industry. This industry spends a lot of money where it's not required to be spent. So I would say there are levers. I can safely say there are many more levers that need to be pressed. Scale is on our side, and I think that is the big companion of good, well-performing telecom companies. Once you have the scale, you have a lot of leeway to do things. And currently in the marketplace, if you see, operators who don't have scale are suffering. So yes, we have levers. We'll have to be more cost efficient. We have to be more efficient in terms of delivery to customers. We need to continuously win in the market. And I feel that while these 2 years you need to tighten your belt, but look at the long term from investors' point of view. Where in the world will you have 700 million to 1 billion true big broadband users, which will be served by 3 or 4 operators? It's a delightful situation. It's organizing this industry into big players who will be able to deal with technology, deliver customer satisfaction. And from that point of view, 3 or 4 companies will deliver this to India and its billion people. And I have no doubt Airtel, which has been on the forefront for the last 22 years, will remain in the forefront.
You know, an obvious question is, and you did indicate that for the industry as a whole, revenues will continue to grow, which obviously means that for Bharti as well, it will grow because it's the leading operator. But what about margins? I know you don't give margin guidance, but would it be fair to say that we will not see a drastic cut in margins over the next over the next few quarters or over the next couple of years, that it would be broadly stable, little bit plus or minus, a few percent here or there? Or do you think there could be a drastic?
It's hard for me to give that guidance. The fact is, when 2010, 8 new operators were given licenses. Many of them launched plans which were per second billing, and you saw for a 2-year period there was a margin pressure. So I'm saying I don't know where in the short run how margins will get affected.
But in the medium term?
I'm saying, but even in the short term, you have levers to, ensure that you don't have too much of margin pressure. But I'm saying you have to see medium to long term. 3 or 4 operators serving this nation's billion people. I think investors should take heart. This is an industry which is now shut out to any new entrant. Even before you say yes to this industry, you need 150,000 crores. Jio has shown it that you need to be on this table to play. You need 150,000 crores. That's a lot of money. And which means only 3 or 4 players will be able to serve this country. And that, to my mind, is the good news. That's where the US is today. AT&T Verizon has 2 operators and then 2 fringe operators. Wherever in the world you go, you see 3 operators serving their countries. And this is where we are getting to. 3 or 4 operators will serve this vast data-consuming nation.
And you think they'll make money on that 150,000 crore investment?
Well, they're saying they're going to have a double-digit return. That makes me happy because that's good news.
Sure. 6 months from now, do you think Bharti, Vodafone, Reliance, Jio, Idea, you think they can all happily coexist? Is that an ideal scenario? Do you see that happening? 4 players coexisting in the market?
I don't know they'll happily coexist, but they'll coexist.
So you think they'll continue to fight, at least in the marketplace for sure?
Absolutely. We'll all fight for the customers.
2 to 3 years from now, Mr. Mittal, will Airtel continue to be the largest operator in this country?
I have no doubt.
You have no doubt about that. It is always a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for taking time out and doing this interview, Mr. Mittal. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.